Andrew, it's good to see you again, man. It's Halloween. You're fighting through a cold. You're in the rainy season out there in I guess Washington. How close are you to Seattle?
In Redmond. So we're just on the east side, so on the other side of the lake from Seattle.
Yeah, it's been a pretty painful season. This is not a sports podcast, but if it was, we'd have a lot of beers because we would be not very happy with the state of the Seahawks.
But it frees up my Sundays, so hang out with the boys more, so no complaints.
That's right. Now you can focus on work. All right, I got to ask. I've been doing this series on staffing technology. I'm really fascinated by it as a veteran myself of the industry. I'm really thrilled to see all the changes that are coming into our industry. But how does a economics major from the University of Washington end up in a president's role of a staffing technology company?
Definitely a journey. Come from a family of entrepreneurs, so always knew I wanted to do a startup. And then I graduated University of Washington in '08, so that was a little bit of a financial crisis at the time. So just trying to find, what jobs were available, and I liked working with people. Wanted to get into sales. So I found an opportunity. It was actually at Apex Systems. So I started there, and I had a few friends that also got hired at the same time, and learned a lot.
Wait, Apex now that's technical recruiting.
Yep.
So you were
I did
an
that.
you were an IT recruiter.
Correct. So that's where I learned the two true problems of a bad database and the issues it causes. So, and also, I set some all-time highs on call numbers, but a lot of those were just dead numbers, but it still helped my metrics, so that was good.
We had metrics as well. The company that I started at, and I think they had like 7 different metric categories, and one of them was phone calls. And I think most people were shooting for, gosh, it was like maybe 1,200 calls, 1,100 calls a month. You break that down into 20 days. I mean, you're making a lot of calls. That was back when actually people were using the phone, answering the phone. I imagine it's very different now for people who are, what are they? I'm going to send X number of emails.
Text messages as well. But yeah, definitely back then it was funny. Even in my training, it's like, you got to make dials and on that metric. I'm like, well, what about quality of calls? I'd rather make 20 quality phone calls, which I think obviously that's the goal long term. But in that, it was just smile and dial and hit as many numbers as you can. So I think one day I hit like 135. Right, or it's
That's
just like wrong numbers too, or people are like, why are you calling me? So
yeah, and you really do see just a database littered with these wrong numbers is just it's painful. Yeah, great. Your metrics look great, but you're not making any placements. So you figured out that there was a big data problem in staffing. So for people who don't understand, or maybe they want to understand like what this solution is, you're talking about implementing an AI solution to help a staffing company's database, right? That's the 30,000-foot view. Walk us through this. Why is this such a problem? Why has it become such a big problem?
yeah, I think, and I can start from the beginning of it, and I think it's becoming a bigger problem now, especially with the adoption of ChatGPT. So, I did recruiting, and I learned a lot of the sort of problems, and also in search and match, and people understanding fit. So somebody will say, hey, this is a great, or look for these keywords, and as a recruiter, you're like, oh, I found somebody with a resume and these keywords, like that's a terrible fit, right? Or that person's not qualified. I'm like, but they have the keywords. So like, where are we on this mismatch? So that was actually 10 years ago when we started. It was all around, how do we more easily match when somebody has a job rec or a person, or there's an account manager. So how can the algorithms and systems help to make it easier for those recruiters to have that success? So that's where we started. And then we kept building off of that, building custom AI systems. But ultimately, bad data, right? If it doesn't matter how good your technology is, if the data is bad or unreliable, then nothing will work. And it's really frustrating, just being a recruiter, operating these databases and just not having access to that reliable information. And it's really just that silent productivity killer. So, for us, actually, it's not even, we sort of went way ahead of market building these very advanced AI systems. Awesome. We got some patents, but everything comes back to just bad data. And that is a problem now that, when you're looking at scaling across millions of records, it needs to be fixed before anyone can adopt automation or AI or anything else that's going to be coming out here in the next few years.
You just said that you're actually building your AI system. That was one of the questions I had, was that were you doing that, or were you trying to utilize some of the open source, what are they, the NLPs? I
Yep.
use a lot of the stuff at a kind of a cursory level. So, I mean, you could obviously take us to school on that. So do you incorporate any open source, or is everything is kind of homegrown and patented?
No, yeah, we built all of our, and that's why we're able to do what we do today, is because we built this massive infrastructure to custom build these AI models, which, I think for recruiting, a great way to think about it is we were building models where we could go to like your expert recruiters and say, how would they read a resume, right? What would they find as most important about this person and highlight that? So that's what we were actually building AI models to go into these databases, read resumes, as an extension of that expert, and then summarize it. So it was really around personally developed models. So this was a little pre-Chat GPT, which I think is a fantastic tool. Use it all the time. But in that, like even if you have that model and it represents somebody's opinion 90% of the time, if the data that it's reading is wrong, then the results will be wrong. And I think that's where that frustration comes in, just around using AI in general. But yeah, it was. Yeah, we could talk all day on AI, but it still comes down to good clean data and even training data for it. So it's been a big industry problem and one that's not going to go away anytime soon.
When I started looking at just how does a tech system scan and look at a database, the first thoughts that I had was, and you're going to correct me on this because I think your solution is probably far advanced from this, but it kind of shows you probably where the average user thinks about something like this, and you can maybe scale up the thinking and help people see it for what it is. But when I look at a database, I just see fields. When I log
Yep.
into Bullhorn, right, I see, okay, here's the contact field, here's the candidate field, here's the company field. And yeah, you can customize some of them. And when you open up a field, you see some have, they're empty, or some of them are you can customize. And at first I thought, okay, is Andrew simply filling in the blanks? And I thought there's got to be much more to it than just a data mapping, right? Because I think data mapping's been out there for a while. So could you kind of compare, contrast, like what this AI system does in relation to that basic concept of just mapping?
Yep. Yeah. And I mean, mapping is probably the most important thing too. Like how you're utilizing these fields, how they're structured. So I think what people don't realize is all the systems or even microservices connected to that database that's trying to fill in information. So even, a parser engine, if it's not putting in phone numbers in the right format, that means they're not clickable. So there's a lot of this just foundational data mapping, organization, and also information that's buried in their system. So that is like, how do you extract it and put those controls around it to say, hey, we're going to have consistency on entering that information in. So every time you go to that profile or that record, whether that's a automation tool, a person, or an AI bot, that it knows exactly what to expect when it gets there. And that is, I mean, it seems basic, but it is one of the hardest things to do. And the thing with Bullhorn too, which is what we focus on, is everybody has, and this would be Salesforce, I mean, any system we've ever worked with, they just use their database in this like unique way, or they have done these like hacks to it to make it work, never thinking about the long-term impact of that. And so, even when we get in there, it's just like, why are you putting this data in this spot? Like that's not even the correct, area to do that. And this is what's going to happen if you continue to put it there.
Oh my
Or
God, I'm guilty of that.
another thing is, yeah. Or you have required fields, and people are like, I have to put, recruiters. I've been there. I'm like, I'm just going to put an X for the email, and then go on with my day, and that shows a complete record, right? And it'll be someone else's problem. So, all those little sort of micro hacks or alternative usage of fields and data mapping, it's like for any AI automation, like where we're going as a society with all this data, it's like the most critical, important thing to actually have controls around that database and the fields and how it's all being managed.
I think leaders do understand that data is gold, and that's what they want to keep and optimize and utilize it to the best possible way. And I think what you said at the top about looking at how does an expert recruiter read a resume. You know, if you could find a way to like take that knowledge and build it into this, kind of an AI model that kind of thinks, the way they are. Like for example, I read a resume from the bottom up. Maybe that might sound weird to people, but I never start at the top. I want to see school, not always down there, but I want to look at those first few jobs because that's like the foundational level of where they got their basic, foundation. And then I kind of work my way up.
Yeah.
And it would be interesting to hear more from you on, okay, the database is now organized, right? You've got it parsing everything in the right spaces, but what's this next layer that you've kind of hinted on? That's what I really would want to hear about today is what are some of these, what's the possibility?
Yeah, and I think you're seeing this more around like intelligent agents that are coming out, but it is a lot of like preference, right? How like what do you value? So do you value education or not? Certifications. How do you, label them? Another aspect is which we've dealt with for a long time is when people apply for jobs, they look at the job description, throw in all the keywords as skills at the top, right? So the non-intelligent systems like pick that up, like it's a great match, but how are they using that in the context of like describing their work and their accomplishments? So that was something that we actually had, part of the reviewing, right, around these intelligent agent models. But just to, answer your question, where is this going, that eventually you are going to have this ecosystem, right, or this network of these personalized intelligent agent models that are hyper tuned to your organization. And that network effect of all these little microservices is really a key piece to, I guess, AI adoption or making it, not one size fits all across organizations. And then the cool stuff, which is far in the future, is that all those little agents get controlled by like a master AI model, right? And that's where you start to get to that really advanced usage. I would say we're still 5 to 10 years out from that. I think you can pay a few $1,000,000, right, to build some of these with ChatGPT, but that's this network effect and the fine tuning at all these different areas around reading resumes, bottom to top, right, or what do you actually care about them, and that's really the long term. It's almost like you need an AI solution architect, right, to help coach on all these different problem areas and work with teams. And I think that sort of product-oriented solution architect is still a role that isn't quite built out yet. And it's a great, that'll be sort of that future, right? When people talk about AI is taking jobs, but you're going to have these people who are going to shift to really understanding the art of how to deploy these services within a database and make them more productive.
So you've got staffing companies of all different sizes, different industry sectors that they focus in. Some businesses are more complicated, some are pretty straightforward. For example, light industrial, pretty, not very complicated. Scaling all the way up to, I don't know, traveling nurses. And I know you guys deal with healthcare, so I kind of mentioned that. Are there particular industries or level of complexity that make this solution better suited for them? Or is it frankly, it can help everyone? Because I'm having a hard time seeing, like, how does this help light industrial? Maybe it does. I need to understand more.
Yeah, so I guess it depends on what their goal is. So it does work across the board. We have customers in every sector. But if people in light industrial are applying from Indeed and they have an Indeed email, okay, does that need to be replaced with a personal email or a phone number so that you can start to reach out to them? So across the board, I'd say our vision for all staffing firms is how do we help them create this private marketplace, right? So they are not relying on going to LinkedIn or the job boards, and that'll always be there. But really, I think that the golden sort of North Star for these staffing firms would be creating a private marketplace. And before that person applies to a job, you should already be engaged with them somehow so they're coming to you for that placement. So it's really getting ahead and maintaining those relationships. And it's about, where do you contact these people? What's the best place to do that? Is it Facebook? Right? Is it on LinkedIn? Is it through email? Is it through phone? And then, also it's funny too, like time of day really matters. So you'll have people who will do a campaign. It's like, well, you just called all the nurses while they were on shift. Like, they're not going to pick up your phone. So, that's a big aspect too. But no matter how that data is coming in across the board, like you need to make changes to it to make it work for your organization.
Well, you just kind of mentioned some of those other social networks, and I mean, you've thrown a few things out that I think sound really intriguing. This private marketplace, this intelligent agent model. I think when I look at a database, you want to make it alive. You don't want this just to be the static data, because you spend all your time going between multiple systems, and that's that. Would you call that the silent productivity killer? So it's like you find somebody, information's not right. Let me go check these 3 other databases and try to find it so I can contact them. Do you envision this intelligent agent and private marketplace connecting all the social networks so you can communicate across multiple platforms?
Yeah, I mean, so there's tools to help you do that right today. So at least like the biggest thing, and I think where everyone needs to start is, and this is goes back to almost like an inventory problem of like, a lot of staffing firms just don't understand what their inventory is. Like, who are these people? How do I connect to them? What are the different avenues to do that? But it's, people are going to shift. Like, you see people who are active on LinkedIn and then they're not, or they're on Facebook, right, and not on LinkedIn. Everyone still has email, text messaging. I think right now during election cycle, no one's probably looking at those because it just is an onslaught, right, of just constant political messages. But
Way
this,
too much.
the private marketplace, I think there's some really cool new products as well, helping to create more mobile experiences as well, where, especially in nursing, right, that they're able to, get their credentials, help to manage, right, the different jobs that they're looking for, and make it more of a private experience versus just, aimlessly searching, LinkedIn for a job. They have like a more known personal experience with a staffing firm. So I think, social will come and go, but it's really, again, it's who are they? Are they a target? And then how do you maintain that relationship and connection with them?
Well, tell me more about that, because I think that's the advanced recruiter that is learning how to nurture the people that are already in their database. It sounds like that this system allows you to really nurture and keep that relationship. So when the candidate is ready to make a move, it's easy for them to connect back with you, and they know what you're doing. I know that wasn't a question, but I know it wasn't a question, but is that what this is enabling the candidate to then kind of?
Yeah, it's enabling that direct connection with them. And so you have, there's a bunch of, different marketplace partner providers as well. So especially I think Bullhorn has one of the best partner ecosystems. And so we work with, especially if you're in healthcare, right? There's, Preos or Opus Match, and there's Staffing Engine. I think you had, Matt Dichter on the podcast the other week. So there's a lot of these tools who are specializing, and you need to focus right on how do you engage and automate, right, that engagement and maintain that relationship. So it's doing a lot of that heavy lifting for the recruiter. But then again, like that data that we're supplying and helping to structure is a fuel to those systems. And I think, and Bullhorn's obviously working on different tools as well, but it's really just, the reliable information to develop that connection to that person, and then whatever you can do, right, to keep that audience. So you have a podcast, how do you stay connected to your audience? And you're on Spotify, or if it's on
It's on iTunes as well, all those places.
So you're going to go to where your audience is, but you got to identify that person first.
Yeah, I think this is such a needed add-on, or I think kind of fundamental basis for databases. So let's say there's a business owner out there, they know they've got a database. How do they know that their database really is in need of this cleanup? Because maybe they're in denial. Maybe they're 2, 3 levels up.
Yep.
You know,
Yeah, I mean,
how do you
yeah,
assess the
data,
health
data,
of?
data speaks for itself. Thankfully, and this is why we are hyper focused on staffing firms, right? So Vetted, our company, we've been around 10 years. We've developed all this HR technology, but we purpose built Candidate IQ, which is our product, for Bullhorn, and that was because there is this specific need. You have a lot of legacy, just databases. They've, 10 years, 20 years, or they've had these migrations. So we just know there is this like data drama and chaos that exists, and it
Data
happens
drama.
all the time. Yeah, I mean, like we had one client who they had 100,000 records that all had Indeed's headquarters as the personal address for their candidates. So this stuff just builds up, right? It's like, they talk about technical debt. Well, this is like data debt, and it's extreme at this point. And then ChatGPT comes out, and all these other services are like, oh, let's use our database. And yes, you had a volume of records, right? People have 3, 4 million records in there, but how many of them are usable, right? How do you understand the usable data? How do you pare that down? And I've always talked about noise reduction is like the critical thing for AI or search and match. Like you got to know who they are. You got to know which data you want to keep, get rid of the rest. Um, but this is just, it's a problem I think inherent, in every single staffing firm. And how we help is obviously you have to prove it, right? So our whole process is we want to show you, right? So how do we help educate you on your issue? How do we coach you, right, through those problems to a solution? And then what's that vision, right? And I've already hinted, right, at that private marketplace and controlling and managing it. So we go through and we just make it very obvious. Like we just analyze the database. We do it very quickly. Just say, this is all your missing data. This is how you're using these fields. This is the opportunity you have to complete those records. So then is that going to move the needle for you, right? Is that really going to drive business growth for you in that way? And so we work with them too on a lot of that strategic next steps, not just, okay, I'm missing emails. I added them back in, right? Now what? And we have to have the tools and sort of that guidance to help support them.
Yeah, you mentioned that you're focused within Bullhorn, and Bullhorn has all these great automation tools. But for people who don't understand what this Bullhorn automation is, could you just give everyone kind of a high level of what automation is doing for staffing companies and recruiters? Because if you don't have access to the data's wrong, you can't automate. So it's like, wait a minute, I know you're kind of excited by these tools. Let's start with cleaning up your database. So tell us high level kind of what these automations are and why they're important.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's a critical piece. And for us too, we try to figure out that, what's the best way for us to like do all the data management automation and parsing and cleansing and enrichment. And there's sort of this handoff to then Bullhorn automation. So, even like we have, an accounting client and they need to know if people have worked at like a government, business before or publicly traded or like a, Fortune 500 business, because it really means like your level of accounting just background and experience. And so that's a great way for us to be able to put that into a field, and then automation can then assign that person, right, to either a category or specialty or even like a branch, right, or a person to say, hey, this is the type of client or candidate that you work with. So here they are, right, and make them aware of that. But a lot of it too, like normalization. So you could think about, even in IT, it's really bad, right? The variations of titles. Like you could have 100 variations of software developer, right? Just, especially with like, and I don't think people realize this on LinkedIn, a lot of it that is social. So it's not just a formal resume, but it's how they want to be seen by their community. So people get very creative. And so even in our world,
You mean
it
they're
makes it easy
embellishing?
for us.
Who would ever do that?
Yes. Or they're just getting cute with it. So they like to invent their own titles, but being aware of what those titles are, so we help to do that, and then we'll say, hey, these are the 20 variations, and you get that with like nursing as well. So all these variations to you might mean one, senior software developer. So that's a great spot for us to say, hey, we'll help identify all the variations, and then you can put that into automation or bullhorn automation, and then anytime it sees that again, it's going to just correct it and normalize it. So that consistency, and even go back to my recruiting days, how do you make it so it's very consistent? Like think of if I didn't have to figure out the 15 different software titles that meant at the time, like Drupal developer, right? It was an old, a rec I was working on, but it was really frustrating for me to figure that out. And the system could have done that for me. So now all of a sudden you're accelerating the education and training. And I think, Bullhorn automation does a great way of helping to organize, right? And just keep that consistency. But then also outreach. So how are you connecting with these people? When do you go and email them? So I think the whole strategic outreach campaigns that Bullhorn automation could do is also critical.
Yeah, I could have another whole podcast on bullhorn automations or just automations in general because they're kind of mind blowing. And like that one you just brought up about the normalization, for if you've ever had just a plethora of data and you're trying to identify this one type of person, and the system is stupid. So you type it in this way, and then you get your results. And then you save it to some kind of like an internal clipboard. And then it's like, okay, let me run another search. All right, let me add these people to that first search, and hopefully it'll eliminate the people who I've already found. So I'm picking up those other 4 people that used it differently on their resume. And it takes a very experienced recruiter to go through and figure out there's 7 different titles, like you were just saying, for what, the Drupal? Never heard of that. So, people don't understand just how much time and brain power, and it's like soul sucking to have to do that. It's like, oh God, I've got to go back to the system
It's
and
brutal.
try to find it.
Yeah. We had a customer the other day, and a lot of, because we're indexing all the data, it makes it very obvious of like variations. So they put in the name of a company that they consistently hire for, and they need to know or pull from, and they need to know if someone's worked there or not. But like you have spaces before and after the name, you have capitalization, you have hyphen. Like people just get so creative, even on company names like Microsoft. Like we did a study once that's like 100 variations of Microsoft, but it's all just Microsoft, right, to that organization. So being able to identify and then normalize that data is really critical. And even like a parser, when it does that, okay, it's going to parse in what the person put into their resume, but
Word for word, letter for letter.
Yep. And then you got to manage it. So that, we talk about like commands and controls, like the massaging and managing of that data that gets structured. That's really important, right? There's back to almost intelligent agent world. Like there's these little micro systems or services that keep building on each other. And then it's okay. And this is where automation gets exciting. So it's in there, and now we can start to normalize. And they showed us the query they had for that company because they manually were doing this like in a Boolean search. And I think they had 30 or 40 that they had to, over time, been like, okay, these 40 different variations equal this one company. It's like that should be completely automated and removed, and no one should have to think about that.
Exactly. I don't think people understand. Maybe they do. Maybe that's why this is such a hot new kind of staffing tech area. I'm excited for us in Timpl and all of our different branches. I think I'm really looking forward to us getting into all the automation. But I'm really glad I've been talking to you kind of on here and kind of offline the number of times that we've talked, because I realize there is a little bit of pre-work, if you will, right? Because I imagine if you go in and spend the money to go through automation, it's not necessarily Bullhorn's responsibility to make sure your data is cleaned, and I think maybe in time, everything is seamlessly integrated. Like, hey, if you're going to go into automation, then you need to go through this first step. You need to work with Andrew, and they're going to get everything organized, cleaned up, so you can fully utilize our tools, because nothing could be more frustrating than taking a whole company through an automation process and then not being able to be serving that data up in the way you thought.
Yep. Yeah. And I think it's fun for us. Like we just love solving problems, and whether you're thinking about, adopting Bullhorn automation, or you have already purchased it and you're struggling with it, or you have very advanced use cases, like we can work with everyone to help expand that adoption. And that's really, I think, our core sort of ethos too of what we're doing is making Bullhorn and that investment that they made just maximize the value for them. But that's the fun part. Like we can work on, I use the, putting in the different, business types, right, and helping to assign to branches, right. That's a little bit more advanced automation. But then just people who like they're just missing information, so the automations don't run. Like let's figure that out. Or people also gun shy. Like they've been not burned, but they've purchased data in the past, right? Or they've done these licensing to like get access to phone numbers, but it never really panned out. Or they're spending a lot on LinkedIn as well, right? And like we don't feel like we're really using everything we paid for. And I think this is a great way for us to come in there and really help to give them confidence in their data, understand the fundamentals of it, and then just ensure that they're going to get usable information, and that Bullhorn has all these great tools set up, right, to really capitalize on that data. So, we're here to do the dirty job of fixing that database, and so, something we love to do.
Well, I like the way that you position yourself as a partner, because it's not a one size fits all, and that's really what I'm getting from this, is that it's here's our database, here's how we use it, here's how we interact in our marketplace, here's how we like to deal with our clients, our candidates, here's how we, look at data, assess information. But these are the gaps that we're having. This is what we're not able to do as quickly as we want. And then you and your team, you guys have just, looks to me like you've worked with so many different companies that you kind of already know, like, we can fix this. It does not going to take a long time. I think it's exciting. I think my industry, our industry, you worked in it hands on. It's ripe for this change, because you've got these old legacy systems, these old legacy owners with just millions of records, and now it's like, hey, let's use AI. Well, hold on, we got to get things cleaned and organized before we can go through this great automation process. I think it's great. You're 10 years now into this, yeah?
Yes, 10 years. Yeah, it was a lot of, because we were almost too early to market, or I guess very early. So even a lot of the patents that we filed immediately when we founded, my co-founder is an awesome data scientist, and that technology is now just becoming very relevant. So it's very cool to see. But we've always been sort of loving the future of technology, but it's always right, especially with entrepreneurs, like, where's the market at? Where's the reality of it? How do you help people? And so I think it's a very exciting time right now for that to be coming together. And we spent all this even sort of hybrid, right, of software and professional services. And so a lot of professional services that we were doing, it's how do we productize that? And we had that infrastructure in the team. And I think that's something that also is exciting, is that we just have a team that has a ton of knowledge and experience doing this, and we love it. And we just every conversation we have, like, almost like the bigger the problem, the more fun we have. So we just love to take it on and help people where we can.
I think one of the biggest challenges I would have is that I get a lot of ideas, and then you're sitting on top of some powerful technology like this, and it's probably, you have to like control yourself, like, oh, we could fix this, we could fix that, we could fix this. Because really, once you have built something like this, it's this, you just feel like it could go everywhere. It could help so many different, industries. So kudos to you for, keeping those guardrails on and being really focused and really nailing the industry. And then, from there you can say, hey, we're dominating staffing. Why don't we, look elsewhere? If you were to look elsewhere, though, I'm curious, where would you look if you were like beyond staffing?
So we, that was a hard lesson learned, to focus. So this is why we're so focused right now, is because we went so broad. Like we even won an award. So in 2018, right, from Gartner, cool vendor, top 5 company in the world, right? Innovation. And so you get excited, right? And then you want to do everything. We can do all this, but we did not raise $10 billion like ChatGPT or OpenAI did. So that's a little bit of a reality, right? That you think as an entrepreneur, like you can just do everything, and
there's some constraints.
Like, probably didn't realize too, like, focus in sales and marketing is important too, right? Over just like, I have a cool product. But we're doing, other areas that we worked on. So we've actually done some really cool stuff in medical school admissions. and retargeting and helping to align people with the right medical program. So call it applicant IQ, but it's, for us, it's really developing these hyper focused product lines, for a specific system and use case and customer, because we've realized that the deep focus is what's needed to really have success in where that need for AI is going. Because otherwise, if it's surface level, it's just not going to get the job done.
You bring up a great point, and I appreciate you, being honest about the, going too wide, too broad, and then realizing, hey, we need to focus in. And you do learn. You as an entrepreneur, as a founder, you begin to realize we can't be everything to everybody, and you do have to invest in sales, in marketing, in positioning, and what do we put in on our website? Because when you do reach a category of prospects that don't know you, what are they going to do? They're going to have to research you. And if your website looks like you're all over the place, they just don't feel like they personally have a home with you. So I think that was a brilliant move, really, just to say, we're going to nail staffing. And everyone knows that, right? I mean, even in your name, vetted, which is kind of clever, I think. And then you've got your product, which is Candidate IQ. I think it tells everybody, we are staffing. And then maybe, we'll raise $10 billion, right? And then you can have a DBA and go off and conquer the other spaces.
Yeah, and the name too, right? Vetted data it's all about vetting your data, right? Or decision making. So again, putting myself back in that recruiter chair, right? Of like, how is this data could have worked better for me, right? It made it more reliable. But I do wish I had spent that 25 grand to get that extra E in the domain name. So that is also something, right? It's VETTD, AI. We have the .com. We got all of them. But that's one is, hey, if I could go back.
Who in the hell is out there with that E? He wants to buy it. Come on, just put it on the marketplace. Yeah. Let Andrew buy it. So annoying.
It was 27 at the time, so it was.
I'll tell you.
I was being scrappy.
You try, maybe you're being cute and clever too. Who knows? And now, crap, where's that other E? That's all right. Too bad you can't buy a vowel. Okay, that's it for my corny jokes. Yeah. I tell you, Andrew, we could go on and on. I think, though, now that we've done a good introduction to the space, I think this opens us up for future conversations that we can, expand, go a little bit deeper, maybe look a little bit more into automation and some of the other fun areas that you're fixing and targeting. But I think this was a great introduction for everyone just to get a feel for what the heck are they going to do with their data. And that's you.
We got a solution for them, so. Yep.
So what is the best way for people
thank you,
to... No, listen, it's great. It's great to talk to you. I really wanted you to get your story out there a little bit too for people, because I've, folks in the industry have been talking about you. I've heard you a few times. I'm like, man, I gotta, talk to Andrew and get him down here. What's the best way for people to kind of connect in with you and kind of take some baby steps to figure out if is their database really
we're a Bullhorn Marketplace. We're a Bullhorn Marketplace partner. So if they want to go there, they can submit a form. They can talk to their Bullhorn account manager or sales rep. So they're happy to make that connection. You can just reach out directly. So on LinkedIn, or vetted.ai. So VETTD.ai is our website, and you can find us there too.
It's awesome. And there'll be links in the show notes, so everyone can if you're just listening or whatever it is, you can just kind of go to the show notes and find everything you need for Andrew and Candidate IQ. Andrew, great seeing you again today, my man.
Likewise. Thanks, Tony.
We'll do it again.
All right, and happy Halloween.
Yeah. It's spooky data. I told myself I wasn't going to do all the corny jokes. It's really hard. It's really hard. I'm doing my best. Happy Halloween, everybody.
All right. See ya.